Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 29 of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoy this what if, and want to see part 30 of it, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Dump City Docks. Naruto looked around while Sasuke slowly rose back to his feet across from the teen. Raven and the girls were no longer in a catfight to end all others. The other titans were staring at him, as were Tartarus, and the shinobi seemed the most surprised by his new form. Given that it usually means we're being influenced by Kyuubi, we suppose we should forgive them. Naruto mused to himself before looking back to Raven, and had to resist giving a wolf whistle. Holy hell, is it you, Card-chan? Naruto questioned while the red-skinned demoness mutely nodded her head while looking at him. Wow, we never knew how much of your figure you hid with that cloak, Naruto said with a light whistle, and Raven smirked slightly, while Jinx and Ayane growled at her angrily. Turning away from them, Naruto narrowed his eyes on Sasuke with a frown, instantly noting the markings over his eyes and single snake-like eye. Naruto's voice hissed and Orochimaru chuckled while a smirk slithered across his lips. Hello Naruto-kun, it's so good to see you in such good health, Orochimaru offered with a mocking bow, and Naruto growled while throwing his right arm to the side. Instantly a familiar long sword appeared out of his flesh before he took hold of it, and took a stance across from the former Sannin. Ah, so that's what happened to my Kusanagi, Orochimaru noted mostly to himself before smirking as Naruto launched at him and swung the blade. You have no idea how long we've waited to tear a piece out of you, Orotin, Naruto shouted while the blade lengthened and Orochimaru jumped into the air at the last second. Chuckling lightly, Orochimaru crossed his arms while hovering in the air, no one moving as Naruto glared up at him furiously. Come now Naruto-kun, you really need to learn how to control your temper, Orochimaru said mockingly while Naruto growled and swung the Kusanagi up towards the former Sannin. Rolling his eyes, Orochimaru folded his wings against his back before rolling out of the way of the blade. Coming out of the spin, Orochimaru brought his wings back out before launching himself towards Naruto, the kunai now clutched in one hand. Growling low in his throat, Naruto launched himself at Orochimaru while swinging the Kusanagi at the former Sannin. Both caught the wrists of the other, Orochimaru still smirking, while Naruto narrowed his eyes. Impressive, it seems you take to Kenjutsu and even to my old Kusanagi like a fish to water, Naruto-kun, Orochimaru noted before flipping into a kick, Naruto stumbling back as the man landed in a low crouch. Sadly however, I do want my sword back, so I'm afraid I'll have to take it from you, Orochimaru said while Naruto grinned and swung Kusanagi at him. We don't care what you want back. Just shut up and die already, Orotin, Naruto roared out while swinging the Kusanagi, Orochimaru flipping over the blade at the last second before landing in a crouch. My Naruto-kun, don't forget this is still little Sasuke-kun's body. If you kill me, you kill him, Orochimaru reminded, and Naruto thought about that for all of 5 seconds before grinning widely. We think that sounds like a bonus, Naruto admitted with a slight grin while twisting the Kusanagi around and pointing the blade towards Orochimaru. Instantly the blade lengthened and came flying towards the former Sannin. Blinking in no small amount of surprise, Orochimaru evaded the attack while evading around several more slashes, Naruto obviously intent on his destruction. Meanwhile, Raven finally blinked before glaring at Ayane and Jinx, and formed her black energy. The energy shoved both Pinkets and Starfire from her person, and allowed her to stand up once more. Brushing off her legs in person, she then held a hand to the side with a smirk. Instantly it was coated in her black energy before a throne of stone formed and rose up beside her. Sitting down, the girl crossed her legs and folded her arms together, watching as Naruto went after Orochimaru with the Kusanagi. Nearby, Starfire groaned while pushing Ayane off of herself, and then grimaced visibly. Oh, why must friend Raven be so violent? Starfire wondered while Jinx rolled into a crouch and watched the fight between Naruto and Orochimaru with wide eyes, as Kakashi seemed to move into position nearby, waiting for his own moment to strike the former Sannin. Probably because she enjoys kicking people around, Ayane mumbled before frowning as she remembered herself being like that. Ugh, now I know how much of a bitch I was, she muttered before also reminding herself it was technically Sakura who was the bitch, thus causing Sakura to start yelling at her. Shut up Pinky, I'm not listening to you, Ayane shouted to herself while Jinx rolled off of the other girls, and then groaned while rubbing her ribs. I think she might have bruised something, Jinx mumbled before looking towards where Raven was and blanched. Is she sitting back to watch this? Jinx demanded, and Kid Flash looked at the scene with a frown. Looks like it, he admitted with a smirk, and Jinx started getting back to her feet, Mammoth helping her up as she swayed. Thanks Mammoth, she mumbled, and the gigantic teen grinned towards her. No prob, he replied while Ino made her way over to them and looked over Jinx for a moment. You should be fine, doesn't look like anything's broken, Ino said before going over to Starfire, then thought better of it, considering the girl was an alien, and held Ayane up instead. Sakura, what the hell were you thinking jumping into fighter like that? Ino demanded, and Ayane rolled her eyes before placing a hand to her head as searing pain burned down her spine. Shit, what the hell is wrong with me? She wondered to herself, idly noting her build had improved as had her bust, and Ino huffed while placing her hands onto her hips. That's what I want to know. You've been acting weird all day. Ino accused, and Ayane rolled her eyes before going over what happened, and then her eyes snapped open. Sasuke threw his shirt on us. It was covered in the same green shit that he, Naruto, and Raven were. It must be why I'm in control. Ayane reasoned and heard Sakura let out a mental sigh of relief. Oh, thank Kami, that means I only have to wait for one of these guys to cough up an antidote, and I can go back to being normal. Ayane heard and then frowned for a moment while thinking over her options. Option 1 was wait for the antidote and pray she was still strong-willed enough to overpower Sakura. Second, she could just not take the antidote, and from how things were going, probably die. Third, she could try to remove whatever the hell was in her system herself, thus preventing any more genetic damage or mutations, while preserving the already altered traits, and retaining her control of the body. Yeah, option 3 was looking really good at the moment. Looking around at the Titans, Ayane walked past an indignant Ino while forming a chakra scalpel in one hand. Opening her shirt slightly to make an incision, Ayane then concentrated while sitting down, hand over the wound. Alright, here goes nothing. Seiken Shishutsu no Jutsu. Delicate illness extraction technique. Ayane thought while closing her eyes and looking for the mutagen in her body. Frowning in thought, she smirked as she found a foreign substance in her body and began to draw it out of herself. Ha! Being a metanin rocks in this kind of situation. Ayane said to herself while healing any damage she could find, while also leaving the minor mutations of her body alone, as she really liked them. Soon feeling out and extracting the last of it into a small sphere in her hand, Ayane held her hand up and looked to see the others were preoccupied with watching Naruto fight with Orochimaru. Looking around, she found a glass bottle and quickly poured the green mutagen into it before stuffing an old rag into the top of it. What the hell do you think you're doing? Sakura suddenly demanded while Ayane whistled innocently while tossing the bottle into a dumpster. Making sure I'm staying in control, Pinky. No one knows I was mutating, so I don't have to worry about them trying to fix us. And besides, I like actually having tits, unlike you. Ayane told the Pincat before yawning tiredly, the physical stress from the mutagen and her own beating catching up to her. I think I'll just take a little nap. She inwardly mumbled before falling asleep, ignoring a ranting Sakura. Back with Naruto, the blonde evaded yet another attack from Orochimaru before landing in a low crouch. Growling lightly, Naruto swung the Kusanagi at the former Sannin, only he easily evaded before landing in a crouch. Pulling out 10 shuriken from his shirt, the Sannin then grinned towards Naruto dangerously. Well Naruto-kun, I never expected you to be so ruthless. Though I must admit it is a pleasant change of pace. Orochimaru mused aloud while throwing the 10 shuriken from his hands, Naruto frowning as they came at him. Moving with lightning fast speed, Naruto stabbed the Kusanagi into the ground, then twisted around in order to dodge the shurikens, while also plucking them out of the air, before coming out in a low crouch, both hands now filled with the used shuriken. Impressive, but allow us to show you how it's really done. Naruto uttered darkly while forming several hand seals. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. He exclaimed while throwing the massive shuriken towards Orochimaru, hundreds of Kage Bunshin shuriken forming from the 9 he'd thrown. Whistling lightly, Orochimaru flapped his wings before flying into the air and dodging and weaving around the attack, a grin splitting his lips as he did. Incredible Naruto-kun, your skills have only gotten more impressive since we last battled. I'm almost tempted to see the limits of your skills, but even I'm not so keen on fighting the one who murdered Madara. Orochimaru thought to himself while Naruto formed a Kage Bunshin at his side. Ready? Naruto asked the clone, and it jumped into the air before transforming into a Fuyuma Shuriken. Reaching out to grab hold of the weapon, Naruto then threw it straight for Orochimaru. Raising a brow, Orochimaru effortlessly evaded the shuriken before one of Sasuke's memories of this tactic kicked in. Quickly turning, Orochimaru saw a poof of smoke as the clone reformed and formed another, while throwing a shuriken it had kept in hand. The shuriken was followed by dozens of others that came at Orochimaru, seemingly impaling him multiple times. Gaping in shock upon seeing the truly grisly, the Titans then watched as Orochimaru dissolved into mud before their very eyes. Blinking in confusion, Naruto then looked around before growling as he realized what had happened. Shit, an Earth clone. But when did he? Naruto started to question while looking around, before the original Orochimaru suddenly appeared out of a building behind the original Naruto. The most impressive tactic, Naruto-kun, however sadly I am not one to fall for such tricks. Orochimaru said before suddenly throwing his hands towards Naruto, the blonde cursing as he grabbed the Kusanagi. A mere fraction of a second later, dozens of snakes shot from the arm warmers Orochimaru was wearing and started to wrap around the blonde, while Orochimaru turned into a flip and slashed the Kage Bunshin that attacked him with the kunai he still had hold of. Growling in his throat, Naruto watched as Orochimaru turned back towards him, and the youth felt his eyes whiten slightly. His skin is paler, it's turning white like Orochimaru's used to be. And his hair, it's getting less spiky. Naruto noted while Orochimaru looked at his hand for a moment before chuckling. So it would seem as if I'm not done changing yet. How interesting. Orochimaru noted before moving quickly, rushing towards Naruto as the teen. Growling, Naruto used the Kusanagi to cut the snakes that were binding him, and bent over backwards to evade a swing from Orochimaru's kunai. Using his momentum, Naruto managed to flip and landed low to the ground before twisting low to the ground and sweeping the Kusanagi. Letting out a light chuckle, Orochimaru flipped back, evading the sword before landing across from Naruto, the said teen narrowing his eyes. Dude, that was so cool. Beast Boy suddenly said while staying back with Knight and the others, Nightwing shivering slightly. It was this guy. It looked like he made something almost like a kind of mud golem, not to mention his snake abilities are creepy as hell, and he's starting to change even further into something not human. And Naruto, he's becoming more and more violent as this goes on. Cyborg, where are you in that antidote when we need you? Nightwing noted, then wondered to himself while Mammoth looked over his shoulder toward the two combatants. Why is that Raven chick still just watching all this without doing anything? Seymour suddenly questioned, and Blackfire frowned while looking towards the girl, then to Starfire. I think she's the type to enjoy others' pain and misery right now. Thus, she's getting a kick out of watching her boy nearly tear this guy into pieces. Blackfire offered as an explanation, and Donnie frowned slightly. That doesn't sound like Raven. She noted, and Nightwing blinked before turning to the ghost girl with narrowed eyes. How would you know anything about Raven? He questioned suspiciously, and Donnie looked at him and tried to think of an excuse. You think you're the only one who studies his enemy's bird brain? We do too. Jinx stated while coming to Donnie's rescue, Knight mulling that over for a moment before turning back to the fight. Sending a silent thanks to Jinx, Donnie then looked back to the fight as well, Naruto still facing off against Orochimaru. We must admit, we don't think we were expecting Oro team to be this much of a pain in the ass. Naruto thought to himself while evading a kunai as Orochimaru threw it at him. Growling, Naruto then twirled and swung the Kusanagi once more, blade lengthening, while Orochimaru merely flipped over it, and then smirked as he formed 5 quick hand seals. Wind release. Great breakthrough. Orochimaru exclaimed as the burst of wind slammed into Naruto before sending him flying into the air. Cursing as Orochimaru flew towards him, Naruto swung the Kusanagi and thus grunted as the man evaded it. Shit, he just had to be an expert in both Kenjutsu and Wind Jutsu, my main tactics, didn't he? Naruto inwardly muttered before Orochimaru slammed into him and then brought him careening down into the ground. Growling, Naruto kicked Orochimaru from his body, and then rolled back to his feet as the former Sannin chuckled darkly. It's been so long since I've had a decent battle, even Sari-sensei didn't give me a battle that was this exhilarating. Orochimaru said while rising up and grinned towards Naruto, and the team merely growled while the possessed Uchiha then slumped forward and opened his mouth. Why does this look familiar? Naruto suddenly wondered, only for his eyes to bolt open as hundreds, if not millions of snakes, suddenly flowed out of Orochimaru's open mouth straight for him. You have got to be kidding us. Naruto exclaimed while taking a step back and quickly considered his options. Alright, Makukaten is out, it's not diverse enough to take out that many, and the stragglers would just attack. We need something that can destroy them all, or at least protect the... Naruto thought, then mentally exclaimed while twirling the Kusanagi around and held it in a reverse grip. Closing his eyes as the snakes approached, Naruto then used a quick 1000 blades jutsu, the hundreds of wind blades surrounding him, slicing through the hundreds of snakes as they tried to reach and wrap around him. Soon the snakes ebbed, and Naruto narrowed his eyes on a grinning Orochimaru. Alright Oro team, what are you going to do next? Naruto wondered to himself while Orochimaru pulled out another kunai and held it in his right hand. Smirking slightly before taking a breath, Orochimaru then breathed out onto the blade. Shaking his head, Naruto watched and then blinked in surprise, as Orochimaru created a literal blade of wind from his kunai. What the hell? Naruto demanded while Orochimaru twirled the wind blade for a moment before pulling out another kunai and breathing in before forming another one in his left hand. A little jutsu I picked up from Danzo during my stint working with his root division of Anbu. It's quite useful if you want to form a blade in a pinch. Orochimaru noted and then grinned seeing Naruto's look. Oh, don't look so surprised, Naruto-kun. My main element is wind after all. Orochimaru reminded and then frowned while flipping back as Kakashi came at him from behind with a Chidori. Easily evading the attack, Orochimaru then used a quick Tatapa on Kakashi to send him flying, Naruto growling as he did, extending the blade of the Kusanagi while keeping it pointing towards the ground. Naruto was sent flying into the air and grabbed Kakashi by his leg before kneeing him in the stomach. Stay out of this, Kakashi no Baka. This is our fight. Naruto told the silver-haired man while throwing him over to the other nin, as the Kusanagi returned to its original length. Groaning as he landed, Kakashi looked up and watched as the blonde landed on one of the still-standing buildings. Did he really have to knee me in the gut like that? I was actually trying to help him for once. Kakashi mumbled to himself while Hinata quickly hurried over to the man before helping him back over to the alley they were watching from. Dude, does the Sasuke guy have enough snake techniques or what? Beast Boy suddenly asked, and Nightwing shook his head, still shocked and surprised by what the two ninja could do. Nearby, Jinx looked on with no small amount of worry, while Raven merely watched for the sake of not wanting to get involved in what was a very interesting fight. What could she say? She enjoyed watching her Naruto tear into the snake freak as often as he could. His name is Orochimaru, Neji stated while rubbing his head, and Beast Boy looked at the older teen. Wow, but I thought his name was Sasuke. Beast Boy questioned while scratching his head, Nightwing looking to Neji with a raised brow. Yes. That body is Sasuke's. However, in our world there was a man who sought to become immortal, in order to learn all the world's jutsu. To reach this end, Orochimaru learned the most forbidden of kinjutsu, a jutsu that would allow him to transfer his soul, and take the body of another for himself. Neji explained, while those around looked at him in shock while Jinx shivered visibly, easily remembering the man with serpent eyes shown to her and Raven by Naruto. So this is that guy Temp told us about, the one with those damn evil eyes. Jinx thought to herself while remembering those slitted yellow eyes in her mind. Meanwhile, Naruto was evading a swing from Orochimaru's wind swords. Growling, the blonde ducked under a swing from the pale and now almost sickly-looking possessed teen. The longer that this progresses further, Sasuke team starts to look more and more like Oro team. We need to end this once and for all. Naruto thought to himself while Orochimaru came at him once more, rolling to the side. Naruto held his hands to his sides. Instantly wind spiraled around his right hand and into the Kusanagi, while lightning arched up the length of his left arm while forming into a single point in his left palm. Oh, what now, Naruto-kun? Going to show me another of your interesting abilities? Orochimaru questioned and got his answer as Naruto quickly swung the Kusanagi towards him. Smirking, the former Sannin jumped over the attack while watching it with the Sharingan, not really surprised he couldn't copy it. Most impressive, Naruto-kun, you've taken your wind and lightning chakra affinities to a level similar to the Nidame's control of water. Had I known you held such promise as a shinobi, I would have taken you as my own personal apprentice. Orochimaru thought to himself while Naruto reared his left arm back, the single point of lightning sparking wildly in his hand before he threw it at the former Sannin. Chuckling, Orochimaru used a quick Hawarimi no Jutsu to evade the attack before it could hit him. Allowing the cut light pull that kid wicked had sliced down, Orochimaru landed and then lunged at Naruto from behind. Growling, Naruto turned and only narrowly evaded a swing of Orochimaru's wind swords. Twisting into a kick, Naruto kneed Orochimaru in the gut before headbutting him in the face, causing him to stumble back. Grinning darkly, Naruto then crouched back before quickly lunging forward and swinging his claws, grinning almost psychotically as he seemed to slice Orochimaru clean in half. Seconds later, the youth felt his eyes widen in shock as snakes suddenly reached out of Orochimaru's severed halves. The snakes shot to one another, coiling around each other before pulling Orochimaru, his back towards his front. Oh my Naruto-kun, that was ruthless, devious, and absolutely vicious of you. Orochimaru noted before his body twisted around into the correct position, Naruto shivering visibly as he saw a twisted grin across the man's face. As I've said before, I much preferred this Nyu over the pacifist I remember from before. Orochimaru mused aloud before twisting his wind blades in hand and lunging forward once more. Dodging around the slashes of the man's blades, Naruto then twisted around and kicked him in the face before lunging forward and slamming his fist into the man's gut. Briefly, Naruto widened his eyes as he noticed that Orochimaru's formerly spiky blue hair had actually turned black, now more closely resembling his original hairstyle. Gritting his teeth and twisting his fist in the former Sannin's gut, Naruto then dug one heel into the ground, while sending him flying back. We want you to shut up, Oro team. We are sick of hearing you prattle on. Naruto growled out angrily before twisting around and kicking Orochimaru, sending him flying back where he flipped back to his feet and landed in a low crouch. Now, Naruto-kun. You should remember patience, otherwise you're going to get sloppy. Orochimaru thought to himself, while closing his eyes, his legs blurring as he launched himself forward at unimaginable speeds. Throwing his hands forward, the former Sannin grinned lightly as Naruto raised a brow. Jukai Jibaku. Snake Authority spell. The pale-skinned man exclaimed as two massive white snakes were extended from his arm warmers. The snakes soon reached Naruto and wrapped around him, making him grit his teeth as they pinned the Kusanagi to his arm. Looking up a second later, Naruto's eyes widened as Orochimaru came at him and swung both of his wind blades. Cursing under his breath, Naruto leaned back to evade a swing from the former Sannin, only for Orochimaru to turn, his legs having somehow formed into a snake's tail. Where does he get all of these snake-themed jutsu? Naruto wondered to himself while using Kusanagi to cut one of the snakes around him, its grip weakening enough for him to slice it off of his body and flip into a low stance. Naruto then looked back to the former Sannin, his eyes widening as the man was upon him almost instantly, a wide grin across his face. Opening his mouth to allow his ridiculously long tongue to roll out for a moment, Orochimaru then swung both blades at the teen. Quickly rolling back to evade the attack, Naruto quickly swung the Kusanagi at Orochimaru in retaliation. Easily evading the quickly swing, Orochimaru then lunged at Naruto swinging one of his swords. Growling to himself, Naruto flipped over the Sannin before stabbing the Kusanagi into his tail to pin him down. Grunting in pain, Orochimaru turned only for Naruto to slam his fist into the snake-like teen's face. Grunting as his head lolled back, slightly, Orochimaru then grunted as Naruto slammed his fist into his gut. Looking to Orochimaru's arms, Naruto quickly grabbed each by the wrist and grinned at the Sannin. "You have no idea how long we have waited to do this," Naruto stated as he made Orochimaru stab himself with his own wind swords, forming an X with his arms. Releasing his wrists, Naruto then slammed a fist into Orochimaru's jaw while spinning into a roundhouse kick. The sheer strength of the kick was enough to force Orochimaru away, the Kusanagi cutting open the portion of his tail it had been lodged into. Skidding away, Orochimaru soon turned and started rolling back before hitting a light pole with an audible grunt of pain. Panting slightly, Orochimaru looked up towards Naruto from his spot on the ground and started to laugh. Blinking, Naruto looked at the man as if he had lost his mind, however Orochimaru sat up and grinned towards him. "Truly Naruto-kun, you have surpassed not only Jiraiya-chan, but also Sarutobi-sensei, and your father in skill," Orochimaru said while Naruto frowned. Something wasn't right with this picture. "In fact, I think you deserve to see my most powerful technique," Orochimaru said with a wide grin before opening his mouth wide up, a pale hand reaching out of it as he did. Grimacing in disgust, Naruto then watched as a second Orochimaru slithered out of the first, fully healed and panting slightly with a wide grin across his lips. "You?" Jinx mumbled while watching the scene, Knight shuddering as even the other ninja looked more than a little green. "I don't care what kind of technique that was or how well it heals you, it's totally fucking disgusting," Jinx then stated and got nods of the head from those around her, the ninja included while Kakashi grimaced, sitting beside of the sleeping Ayane. "Hey, you said this guy was supposed to be looking to be immortal, right?" Knight then asked Neji, and the stoic Hyuga nodded his head. "Then what's the problem with him? I've seen him be cut in half, have swords stabbed through his chest, what sounded like bones breaking, and he's still not down. How is he not already immortal?" Nightwing demanded and Neji sighed for a moment. Being able to take punishment and being immortal are two different things. Orochimaru seeks to live forever, but even with all his techniques and abilities, he is still unable to stop the aging process. Kakashi explained while rubbing the spot Naruto hit him, Blackfire frowning as she looked towards Orochimaru. "He sounds like a couple guys I met in space, all of them were completely psychotic however. This fellow, while I'll admit has few morals, obviously isn't insane. He's more I don't know, cold, like a scientist trying to learn everything I suppose." Blackfire said, and Kakashi blinked for a moment before looking at her strangely. Actually, all things considered, that was a pretty good description of Orochimaru. Kakashi noted before Ino noticed Orochimaru crouching down, his body shuddering. "What the hell is he doing now?" Ino wondered and Kakashi held a hand to Hinata, the young Hyuga heiress, helping him stand, so he could see what was going on better. What he saw was Orochimaru falling to his knees before looking up with a wide, nearly psychotic grin across his face. "Yamata no Jutsu," the former Sannin exclaimed and then seemed to explode, Raven cursing as she teleported, Kid Wicked quickly pulling the others into his cape to evade whatever was happening. Cursing, Naruto grabbed the Kusanagi while flipping back, away from the Sannin, only for a giant white snake had to come towards him. "Holy shit." Naruto shouted aloud while quickly grabbing onto the mouth of the snake as it tried to swallow him. Holding on and gritting his teeth, the teen was then thrown up into the air with a flick of the giant snake's neck. Looking down, Naruto's eyes widened in shock to see what appeared to be a 100 feet long, gigantic snake with white scales that formed spikes down its body, 8 long branching tails and heads, all 8 of the heads being Orochimaru's yellow eyes only with a black sclare. "Dudes, is it a Hydra beast?" Boy suddenly demanded with white eyes while Nightwing gaped and Donna paled gravely. "Well, it certainly looks like a Hydra, though it looks like it's missing a head, and this one is a little big even for the Hydra," Donna admitted while taking a step back as the snake hissed and twisted around its own numerous heads. Excuse me, but what is a Hydra?" Hinata questioned the girl and she blinked before turning to her. "It was a very large 9-headed snake with poisonous breath that it could burn the flesh from your bones. Not only that, but its heads could regenerate and one of its heads was immortal, in that it couldn't be cut off," Donna said without thinking, and Hinata shivered slightly while Kakashi grunted and looked towards the beast. "Well, sorry to break this to you, but that is a different mythical monster from our world, or at least it looks like it." "That would be..." Kakashi started to say before grimacing as his wounds started to hurt him. Nearby, watching on with a frown, Raven lunged forward before jumping into the fray and flying towards the beast. "The Yamata no Rachi," Naruto demanded as one of the massive snake's heads lunged at him from below. Cursing, the youth quickly formed a Kage bunch in which grabbed one of his arms, before throwing him out of the way as it was eaten by the giant snake. Flipping in the air, Naruto landed on the top of a large building before coming to a skidding halt as all 16 of the snake's eyes seemed to lock onto him. "It looks like we were right, this is going to be a very long night," Naruto thought to himself while trying to think up a plan to fight this massive beast. Tartarus HQ. Boyle resisted the urge to snicker or even laugh, though not completely, as they still managed to break through. Gizmo, Cyborg, and yes, even Ravager, had been arguing for the past several minutes on how to finish the compound they would need to cure Naruto and the others. While they had more or less completed it without her, they started arguing after Gizmo threw an insult towards Cyborg and Ravager. This started it, and they'd been yelling at one another ever since, Dwayla watching them the whole time. Of course, being that she wasn't willing to let people die for her jokes. Yes, that's right people, I do actually have regard for human life unlike my dear old Pop the Joker, or was it Two-Face? Maybe the Riddler, or now I'm confused. Dwayla thought seemingly aloud, as if she were speaking to someone with her thoughts. Now then, Dwayla was, is, and has been a chemist for a very long time. Her father did teach her a couple things after all, regardless of the fact she couldn't remember which father she meant most of the time. Unfortunately, she found it hilarious for them to argue while she started concocting the antidote herself. She honestly wondered why no one knew she was good with chemistry. She was the Joker's, or was it Scarecrow's daughter after all? Hell, she even made a compound that changed her skin pigment to stark white. What? Did you readers think my skin was naturally stark white? Dwayla asked seemingly no one while thinking to herself, and then whistled lightly reaching for another chemical. Turning her head back to where Ravager and the others were arguing, she resisted the urge to laugh once more by snickering into one hand. I think these guys really need to get their priorities straight, how about you people out there? Dwayla suddenly wondered while seemingly staring off into space, and then shrugged her shoulders as she put one chemical away. Taking up another one, Dwayla blinked as Gizmo jumped to Cyborg and started grappling with the Metal Man, Ravager grimacing and rubbing her temples as they did so. Yeah, they really need to get their priorities straight, hey. Are you people even listening to me? I'm trying to have an intelligent conversation here. Dwayla inwardly demanded of no one while snickering once more, and placed a hand over her mouth to keep from laughing. Shaking her head, Dwayla then whistled while twirling a vial of chemical in one hand, and poured some into her newest concoction. Technically speaking, creating an antidote was way too easy for her. Her dad made poisons and acids practically for a living. He also made antidotes, just in case. Hell, if she couldn't make an antidote, she would seriously start to wonder about whom she really was. And nobody wants me to be even more confused about who I am. Right. Dwayla thought then asked while putting the last chemical up and pouring some into another vial. Blinking, Dwayla then turned back to where everyone had been arguing with one another, and saw them staring at her. What? Do I have something on my face? Dwayla asked with a blink as they just stared at her for a few moments. No, it's just I didn't actually think you were a chemist. Cyborg admitted, and Dwayla rolled her eyes with a smirk across her lips. I'm the Joker's daughter. Chemistry is practically in my blood literally if you take account the fact Dad fell into a vat of chemicals once I think, or was it someone else? Dwayla said then wondered to herself while scratching her head. Honestly, with all the multiple realities out there she was having trouble keeping track of what her father's backstory was. Right. So are you done? Ravager questioned and Dwayla grinned while holding up a vial. Taught it. One super special antidote. She replied and Gizmo swiped it from her before looking at a sample of Naruto's mutated blood. Please let this work. Gizmo mumbled to himself while pouring a drop onto it, and then looked at it under a microscope. The change wasn't instant by any stretch of the imagination, though given how long it took them to change, it stood to reason it would take time to return to normal. However, after a few moments the small amount of blood started to revert to its original form, Gizmo breathing a sigh of relief as it did. So, did it work or is she just a crazy clown after all? Ravager questioned and Dwayla blinked before shouting an indignant hey in her direction. No, it worked alright. Now we just need to make some more of this shit to fix those three before they completely destroy the city. Gizmo stated and Dwayla blinked and then snickered once more. What's so funny? Gizmo demanded of the girl and she crossed her arms behind her neck. Simple, the city is already being destroyed from what I've heard. Nightwing sent a communication a minute ago about a giant 8-headed and tailed snake called the Yamata no Orochi or something like that. Dwayla replied, and Cyborg visibly grimaced before shaking his head. Why didn't you mention this before? Cyborg questioned flatly, and Dwayla couldn't help a wide grin. Because it's funnier this way. She replied and Cyborg slapped his face while Gizmo slammed his head into the table they were working at. Honestly, did she have to be so random and crazy all the time? Damn it. Dwayla, that's fucking important information. Gizmo shouted at the clown girl, and she shrugged her shoulders. Sighing tiredly, Cyborg looked to his right arm and activated his communicator. Rob, come in Rob. Can you give us an update on your situation down there? Cyborg asked and then saw what looked like Nightwing was running. Cyborg, do you have any idea how long I've been trying to get in touch with you? I even had Jinx call Gizmo, but only Dwayla picked up. Nightwing exclaimed, and Cyborg grinned sheepishly for a moment before shaking his head. Oh yeah, we were having some difficulties. Cyborg started to say and Dwayla looked over his shoulder with a grin. In other words, they were arguing with each other while I finished the antidote for them. Dwayla said and then ducked out of the way with a laugh, as Cyborg glared towards her angrily. Listen, I don't care about that right now. I just need to know how long it'll be till you can cure Nar, Ray, and that Sasuke creep. Knight stated, and Cyborg looked over to Ravager, who frowned in thought. We need 3 very durable syringes, and more of the antidote before we can cure all 3 of them. Ravager replied, and Cyborg grimaced while Gizmo twitched. Listen Rob, try and hold on just a little longer. We should be good to go soon enough. Cyborg said while looking stone serious, and Knight nodded his head while appearing to duck into an alley. We'll try to hold out a little longer. Nightwing, over and out. Knight replied, and Gizmo squinted for a moment while Cyborg turned his communicator off. Sighing tiredly, the teen then placed a hand to his face before turning around to the others. Alright, Dwayla, you and Ravager fix more of this stuff. Gizmo, I hate to say it, but we need to work together to come up with some way to inject this into them. Cyborg stated, and Gizmo nodded his head while handing the vial of antidote to Dwayla, the clown girl grinning towards Ravager as they got to work. Jump City. Naruto cried out while jumping off of a building, as one of the Yamada's heads tore through it. Growling, the blonde turned and cursed as the Yamada slammed the nose of its head into him, sending him flying into the air. Why do we always end up in these kinds of situations? Just once we would like a nice quiet day without something or someone trying to kill us. Naruto thought to himself while twisting his body out of the way as one of the Yamada's heads tried to swallow him. Turning, the blonde swung the Kusanagi, the blade extending and allowing him to lop off one of the Yamada's heads. Hissing out in pain, 2 of the Yamada's heads lashed out, heading straight for the mutated teen. Grumbling in his throat, Naruto twisted around the heads before landing on one and ran down the length of its back. Hissing, the second head lashed out, trying to bite the mutated teen. Naruto quickly lunged out of the way, however, the massive snake biting itself as he did. Hissing out in pain, another of the Yamada's heads lashed out at the tiny mutated teen. Chuckling to himself, the teen evaded that head as well, as smirk crawling over his face. That's the thing about being so fucking big, it makes it really easy to see your attacks are coming. Naruto thought to himself while evading another head, and then jumped off of the neck of the head he'd been on. Swinging the Kusanagi at another head, he growled as it moved under the blade and then came at him. However, instead of trying to bite him, this one took a breath before spitting out a poison mist. Eyes widening, Naruto cursed and then swung the Kusanagi, a burst of wind parting the poison and allowing him to travel through it harmlessly. However, the Yamada's head then slammed into him, a tail moving to slam into his back after it did. Another head then came from the side and quickly caught the mutated teen in its maw. Damn it. We really hate snakes. Naruto shouted loudly before jumping up and held his arms close to his body for a moment. 1000 blades jutsu. The mutated teen exclaimed loudly as hundreds of blades of wind suddenly lashed out at the snake around it. The beast started to thrash loudly before suddenly throwing its head into the air and opening its mouth. Instantly Naruto twirled around and sent another burst of wind flying into the snake. The said serpent head lashed out as the wind cut into one of its eyes, and one of its other heads hissed before flying at the mutated youth. Doesn't this thing ever get tired of this routine? Naruto wondered to himself and then stabbed the Kusanagi down, as its blade stretched towards the head of the Yamada. The Yamada's head moved out of the way, however, and then coiled around the blade of the weapon, before trying to bite into the teen. Cursing, Naruto retracted the blade quickly, and then placed his hands onto the nose of the serpent's head. Growling, he then placed his toes against the bottom of its lips, as it tried to open its mouth and swallow him whole. Narrowing its eyes, the Yamada then lashed out with its tongue, its long forked tongue quickly wrapping around the teen's waist. Ugh, as if your tongue wasn't already freaky enough. Naruto muttered before yelping as the tongue tried to pull him into its mouth. Gritting his teeth, the youth then blinked and grinned as an idea came to mind. Allowing the serpent to pull him into his maw, Naruto held the Kusanagi in one hand before falling down his throat. Chuckling to himself, Naruto then stabbed the weapon into his throat, before placing a foot on the side of its neck and spinning the blade. The head of the Yamada fell off soon after Naruto had done so, the mutated teen quickly lunging out of the open wound to fall into the air. Looking back, he grunted seeing 2 of its tails heading his way before rolling to the side, and then placing his foot against one of its tails. Quickly flipping off of it, the teen found himself in the air as another of the snake's heads came flying towards him. This one didn't bother trying to swallow him, instead it spat out poison at the teen. Chuckling in his throat, Naruto formed a burst of wind from the Kusanagi, and then opened his arms to catch the wind as he fell down, slowing his descent. Dude. He's tearing that thing apart head by head. Beast Boy exclaimed with wide eyes, and Nightwing nodded his head. Wow, he's a lot tougher than I thought. Blackfire noted with no small amount of surprise, and Donnie nodded her head in agreement. Yeah, but something's still bugging me. Donnie then said and got looks from the others, thus placed her hands on her, admittedly wide, hips. How come we're not helping him? She demanded, and Knight pinched the bridge of his nose. Maybe because none of us can apparently control the wind, not to mention constantly dodge and to cut our way out of a giant snake like that. Knight offered before something came to mind. Wait a second here, Naruto can control both the wind and to some extent lightning just like X. He thought to himself with a slim frown, while Beast Boy continued to watch the battle, Jinx openly chewing on her lip as the snakes tried to kill the mutated teen. Dude, this is so awesome. It reminds me of the first God of War, when Kratos faced the Hydra. Only it's not on a boat and he's actually cutting its heads off. Beast Boy noted and Donnie blinked while standing at the other side of the green team. Now that you mention it, yeah, it kinda does. Donnie admitted while Beast Boy stared at the white-haired ghost girl. Whoa, you've actually played God of War? Beast Boy asked with amazement, and Donnie gave him a look. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded angrily, and Beast Boy quickly held up his hands placatingly. Nothing. It's just I didn't think a lot of girls would like that kind of game is all. Beast Boy said quickly while Donnie continued to glare at him, eyes glowing a bright green, while Jinx watched as Raven flew up the length of one of the branched heads. What's she doing? Jinx suddenly wondered, and Knight looked to where Raven was flying, and then grimaced as the girl fired twin beams of heat into the eyes of one of the serpents, causing it to hiss out in pain before thrashing about wildly. It looks like she's helping her boyfriend. Knight offered flatly, and Jinx grit her teeth while narrowing her eyes as Raven flew towards the mutated teen. Raven flew around the head of a snake with a slim smirk across her lips, as she soon came upon the mutated teen. Need a hand, love? She quipped while grasping one of his forearms, and Naruto grinned up at her in response. We are delighted to have your hand, Card-chan. He replied before looking down as the snakes came towards him. And we still have 6 of this thing's heads left to deal with. This should be most interesting battle from now on. Naruto mused aloud while Raven grinned sinisterly while holding the mutated teen close to her body. Flying down towards the multi-branched serpent, Raven grinned as 2 came at them and spat another batch of poison mist towards them. Would you be a dear and get rid of this pesky poison for me, love? I think it's high time this lesser monster learned whom it was fucking with. Raven cooed and Naruto's grin widened as he turned towards the snakes. Gladly, Card-chan, your wish is our command. The mutated teen replied while slashing the Kusanagi, a whirlwind forming around them and blowing away the poison cloud. Smirking, Raven then held a hand towards the head that had its mouth cut up by Naruto, blood pouring from its damaged mouth. She narrowed her eyes. I believe it's high time someone put that pathetic head out of its misery. She noted and then closed her eyes. Azarath, Metrian, Zinthis. She cried and black energy formed over the snake's head neck. Smirking darkly, she then clenched her fist, and the head was crushed under the force of her power. Releasing her hand, she watched as the crushed head fell over, now clearly dead, while Naruto whistled slightly before grinning towards the girl. Impressive, Card-chan, but this isn't a contest. Naruto reminded and then turned his head to look as 2 more of the Yamada's heads came their way. 5 more to go. He noted with his eyes narrowing, Raven moving them out of the way of one of the heads, as it attempted to swallow them. Such an impudent beast, how shall we destroy it, love? Raven asked, and Naruto took a thoughtful expression before holding the Kusanagi to his side. Just spin us around, Card-chan, we will do the rest for this. Naruto stated as the 2 heads came at them from both sides, and Raven grinned. Quickly spinning around, Raven twisted her body around until she was holding on to Naruto from around his waist. Holding out the Kusanagi, Naruto then allowed its blade to lengthen out, slicing through one of the Yamada's heads, while the other quickly ducked down. 4 to go. Naruto thought to himself while Raven brought them to a stop, lightly swaying before shaking her head as another head came their way. Flight towards Card-chan. Naruto told the girl, causing her to raise a brow before grinning darkly as she did just that while forming a fireball in one hand. The Yamada's head hissed as it neared them, then opened its mouth as if to fire another poison mist. However, Raven quickly threw her fireball into its open maw, the Yamada's head hissing in pain as it closed its mouth. Quickly attacking, Naruto stabbed the Kusanagi towards the Yamada, the blade flying into, and then through his throat, before he hefted the ridiculously long blade up and cut the head in half. These serpents wouldn't last a second in the lower levels of hell. Raven noted and Naruto briefly wondered why she knew that, before deciding not to care as the blind head from before came flying towards them. 3 more to go. Naruto noted while Raven grinned as the head came towards them, its tongue sticking out so it could smell them. Shall we attack this oversized garden snake together, love? Raven questioned of her mutated boyfriend and Naruto grinned. Let's. He said and Raven flew them towards the snake ducking under its head before Naruto swung his claws, lashing out at its throat. Raven then spun them around, grabbing one of his arms and swung over of her claws, slicing into his neck further, while continuing to spin them. Naruto then swung the Kusanagi, just deep enough to cut into it without killing it, while Raven then formed black energy along her hand and swung it, causing the energy to form into blades that sliced through the serpent's neck completely. Grinning Raven quickly moved them away as the blind head fell down towards the ground in a heap, Naruto chuckling in his throat. Only 2 more left. Naruto thought to himself while the 2 final heads gazed at them, while the others lay in bloody heaps around them. Hissing in outrage, one head lunged at the 2, Raven looking to Naruto with a wide grin. What next, love? I'm really starting to enjoy this. Raven questioned then said enticingly, a shiver of desire running up Naruto's spine for a moment. Shaking his head, Naruto held one hand to the side and concentrated on his wind chakra, soon forming a Rasengan with it. Futon. Rasengan. Naruto said while holding the ball of wind at his side, Raven getting an idea and forming a ball of fire into one of her hands. Watching as the head came towards him, Naruto and Raven looked to one another before putting their hands and attacks together. The effect was instantaneous. The wind of Naruto's Futon Rasengan increased the heat and intensity of Raven's stream of fire as it was sent flying towards the Yamada's head. The ball of wind and fire literally shredded and then scorched its way through the head, tearing it into chunks of flesh and gore, while Naruto and Raven watched on with wide surprised eyes. We had no idea it would do that, Naruto admitted, and Raven blinked before nuzzling the side of his head. But I believe that it is a most pleasant surprise, wouldn't you say so, love? Raven offered, and Naruto took a mock thoughtful expression for a moment before grinning up towards his girlfriend. We agree, Naruto admitted before turning back to the Yamada and narrowing his eyes, grinning wider than ever. Only one left, he noted to himself while the beast hissed while looking up towards him with narrowed eyes. Whoa, they're so tearing that thing apart, dude. Beast Boy noted, and Donnie nodded her head while watching the scene. And I thought Kratos was brutal when he killed the Hydra. Those two tore that snake thing into pieces within seconds, Donnie said in awe while Kakashi twitched and shivered, making a note that Naruto with Raven was a tag team dangerous enough to be like the Nidayume and Shodayume working together. You have to remember though, Naruto has control of wind to disable airborne poison attacks, and a sword that can stretch and cut through anything. Meanwhile, we know that Raven has supernatural powers and the ability to control fire and fly. Next, both have an unreal regeneration factor, and each one is dead set on protecting the other. The two are practically the perfect tag team. Naruto's wind can increase the heat of Raven's fire to make it burn hotter, and they both watch each other's back constantly. Nightwing noted while Beast Boy blinked, and Jinx nodded her head while looking towards the slaughtered heads of the Yamada. Remind me never to piss them both off, Mammoth suddenly said, getting nods of agreement from the rest of Tartarus as they watched. No wonder he's the leader, the boys all thought at the same time while Blackfire watched with a grin. You look like you're enjoying this, Neji noted, and Blackfire was silent as she continued to watch the continuing fight without blinking. Kakashi-san, what about Sasuke-san, do you believe he is alright? Hinata suddenly asked, and Kakashi blinked before looking to the Hyuga heirs, and his eyes fell. I don't know, Kakashi admitted while turning back to the Yamada, as its final head stared towards Naruto and Raven intently. Set teens were actually starting to get bored as the Yamada stared at them. When will it make its move so we can finally end this farce of a battle? Raven wondered with a scowl across her face, and Naruto shrugged his shoulders, not really minding how close they were to one another. However, no sooner had Raven complained than the Yamada suddenly launched its final head towards them, only to open its mouth as Orochimaru flew out of it with a kunai in hand, the Yamada behind him fading away into chakra as he came at them. It's not over yet, Orochimaru exclaimed while opening his Sharingan eyes wide. Damn, my chakra is fluctuating wildly. This body is deteriorating even as I speak, and from Sasuke's memories he has the Mangekyou Sharingan, and it's nearly caused him to go blind. Such useless vessel, however, I cannot allow this stand. Should they cure Sasuke-kun of whatever this mutation is, I could be resealed, or worse, fade completely, Orochimaru noted before narrowing his eyes onto Naruto and Raven. Amaterasu, he called out while a black flame shot towards Raven and Naruto, the mutated blonde cursing even as Raven pulled them out of the way of the black flames. Orochimaru grunted as he felt blood trickle down from his eyes, his vision going blurry as he stared towards the two. It's almost a shame, Sasuke-kun, I would have loved to have at least harvested your eyes, but now they're useless to me. A pity. But I suppose I'll just have to move on and find a more suitable host, Orochimaru thought while using Amaterasu once more, the flames flying towards Raven and Naruto as she pulled them out of the way. Naruto then swung the Kusanagi, the blade extending and sweeping towards the former Sannin. However, he easily flew over the blade while concocting a plan in his mind, and suddenly smirked to himself. But I can't allow you to go unpunished for betraying me, Sasuke-kun. For that, you will suffer a fate worse than death, Orochimaru thought to himself while sending a final Amaterasu towards Naruto and Raven, both dodging to the side as he beat his wings and flew towards them. Now I've got you, he called out and stabbed Naruto in the shoulder, Raven growling out furiously and grabbing the side of his head with her hand, then sent fire into her hand, and burned Orochimaru's left eye and the side of his head. Painful, but it's just the beginning of your suffering, Sasuke-kun. I'll leave you with only a superficial wound, Naruto-kun. I must respect your strength and cunning. You are truly a worthy opponent, and I look forward to meeting you again, Orochimaru thought with a mental chuckle while beating his wings once more and pushing them all down towards a building. Dude, that was so epic, Beast Boy exclaimed seeing the three slam into the roof of a nearby building, and Nightwing frowned. Seconds after, Ravager and the others suddenly appeared and Cyborg grinned towards Night while holding up a syringe. We've got the antidote, he stated while Dwayla and Gizmo held up 2 more syringes and Night smirked slightly. Good. Now come on, Night stated while running towards the building with the other Titans and Tartarus, Cyborg sighing tiredly before following after them. The Konoha shinobi stayed back for a moment, Kakashi allowing Neji to hold him up before they looked to him. Well, what should we do, Kakashi? Ino asked with her arms crossed and Kakashi sighed tiredly. We follow them, this might be our only chance to capture Naruto. Grab Sakura and let's go. Kakashi ordered and Ino nodded her head before turning to where she'd left Sakura, then blinked. What the hell? She's gone. The blonde shouted while looking around and Kakashi grimaced, then weighed his options for a few moments. Damn it, we'll look for her later, let's go get Naruto and Sasuke now. Kakashi ordered and Neji frowned before jumping after the younger teens. He had his own thoughts on this matter, and he knew what needed to be done, what was the right thing to do in this situation. Meanwhile, the three had hit the roof of the building with a crash of dust, Orochimaru flying off of Raven and Naruto, before skidding back before coming out of it into a roll, stopping just short of falling off of the building. Naruto landed on his arm with a grunt, Raven on top of him placing a hand to her head, while Orochimaru opened his eyes, both now milky white, with blindness from his and Sasuke's overuse of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Now Sasuke-kun, suffer your cursed brother's fate, I have a new world to explore, and new things to learn. Orochimaru thought with a chuckle as his mouth opened up wide, a small white snake with Orochimaru's yellow eyes, slithering out of his throat and away from Sasuke before heading down a drain. Meanwhile, Naruto grunted, his eyes growing heavy, even as the Kusanagi turned into a snake before sinking back into his body. Raven was slowly opening her 4 red eyes before looking at him. What's the matter, love? Did that snake hurt you badly? Raven asked while glaring towards the immobile Sasuke, and Naruto shook his head before gritting his teeth. These mutations are tearing our body apart. Naruto said before hissing out as he felt his legs start to spasm wildly, and Raven frowned while looking down at him. Why do you say we? She asked, and Naruto looked up at her and smiled as best he could, though it looked more like a grin because of his mouth. We say we, because we acknowledge each other. Naruto, and our inner demon. We are part of one another just as you are a part of our Card-chan. Naruto said softly while placing a clawed hand to her cheek, and she leaned into it before shaking her eyes and looking at him strangely. Why would you acknowledge the existence of another in your mind? She questioned, and the mutated teen chuckled slightly. Because our demons are a part of us. He stated and saw confusion across the girl's face, thus placed his clawed hand to her cheek once more. It's a part of us we do not like to admit. It is our darkness, our hatred, and our doubts and fears given life. But regardless of this, it is a part of us, it is something we can never destroy. Naruto explained, and Raven shook her head, obvious confusion across her features. Then overpower and seal it away, you need not bend to the will of a part of you. Take control and make it obey. Raven stated, and Naruto closed his eyes and shook his head. No. Because, it doesn't have to be our inner demon, instead, we can work with it. Work through our doubts and fears, move on with our life, with it as a part of us. Together, we are stronger than anything, and nothing will stop us from fulfilling our goals. Naruto explained and saw a pained look on Raven's face. Stop trying to control everything, stop trying to hide who you are behind a facade. We do not care who you pretend to be to us, you will always be Card-chan. Naruto said before swinging and lying back silently, Raven opening her mouth before closing it. Why should I am hate? I'm hate, rage, destruction and evil. That's all I am, besides, I'd never get to be with you if I let her back in control. She said quickly, and Naruto reached up and pulled her down, placing her head to the crook of his neck. No. There's more to you than just hate or destruction, I saw it while you fought with us. You are also passion. You are a passionate creature, everything you do you put your heart and soul into. And, since you obviously wish to protect us, you are still a part of Card-chan, for if you weren't, why would you protect us? Naruto told the girl, and she reached out and laced her fingers with one of his hands, the 2 eyes on her forehead closing as a small smile crossed her lips. I am rage and hatred, but I am also passion. She whispered as she closed her normal eyes and snuggled into his chest. I believe I can live with that, though I think you and Lust will enjoy it even more. She noted and then smirked at the confused look on Naruto's face, as she finally allowed herself to sleep, Naruto doing the same as the Titans, and the others came to the roof and ran towards them. Sleep tight, Card-chan, we will always be here for you. Naruto thought to himself as he closed his eyes and fell into slumber with the girl. Seconds later, the Titans, Tartarus, and the Konoha shinobi found this scene, Nightwing breathing a sigh of relief upon seeing they were all either asleep or unconscious. Cyborg, go get that Sasuke guy, I don't want him getting away. Knight ordered, and Cyborg nodded his head before running over to the teen, and then quickly knelt down and injected the antidote into his system. Gizmo and Will then moved over to Raven and Naruto and did the same, both grimacing slightly before seeming to calm greatly. Alright Pit Sniffer, they should get back to normal by tomorrow. Gizmo stated, and Nightwing nodded his head while Jinx and the rest of Tartarus walked away from him and stood with each other. Well, it's been fun, bird boy, but we're wiped, catch you next time. Jinx offered playfully as Gizmo teleported them away, Starfire flying next to the black-haired youth. Friend Nightwing, should we go and look for the Tartarus? Starfire asked, and Nightwing shook his head before turning to the Konoha shinobi, growling when he saw no sign of Ravager anywhere. She must have made her escape as well, but so long as we have the ninja, I'm fine with that. Knight thought to himself and walked over to Neji as he held Kakashi up. "You coming with us?" Knight stated, and Neji looked at Kakashi, then saw Ino and Hinata nod their heads and smirked. "Yes. We understand," Neji stated, and Knight turned around to Starfire and Donna. "At Raven and Naruto, we're heading back to the tower," Knight stated, and the girls quickly picked the sleeping duo up before making their way towards Titan's tower, with the shinobi in tow. The next morning in Jump City, an average man walked down the streets of Jump City, whistling a little tune to himself. Nearby, a familiar white snake slithered towards him. Obtaining the Sharingan is all but impossible now. But this world has so much more to offer me, new things to see and learn. I will need a new host, so I suppose this pathetic fool will have to do for the moment. I'll just have to find a more suitable host at a later time. Orochimaru's thoughts echoed in the serpent's mind, before making sure no one was around as it lunged at the man. The snake quickly wrapped around his body, and purple chakra was expelled from it and into his form, as it and the white snake then seemed to sink into his form seconds later. Orochimaru's chuckle echoed from the lips of the man, as he pushed himself up to his feet. "Ah, much better, flesh and blood. And no mutations to hinder me," Orochimaru thought to himself before stretching out his limbs and hissed. "I'm just lucky I was able to save enough chakra for this, otherwise, I fear I would have ended up dying, and I can't have that. I have too much to learn," Orochimaru said to himself before opening his bright yellow snake-like eyes with a smirk slithering across his face. Looking to the sky, Orochimaru placed his hands into the pockets of his pants before walking out of the alley and into a busy street. "Ah, a brand new world for me to explore, with new things to learn, new places to see, and new ways to obtain immortality for me to find. But you have no need to worry, Naruto-kun. I'll return someday in the future, when I've secured my immortality, so I can reclaim my sword," Orochimaru thought with a chuckle escaping his lips as he wandered down the street. Ignoring a few odd looks from people as they saw his eyes, Orochimaru then disappeared into a group of people, heading off on a journey to discover everything he could about this new world. Elsewhere in the city, a familiar fuchsia-haired girl walked with a light hop in her step. She hummed a nameless tune as she walked towards a train station, a voice popping up in her head as she entered. "What the hell are you doing? I thought you wanted to get your oh so precious Naruto back," Sakura questioned of the girl, but not even the Pinkette's angry voice could hamper Ayune's mood. "Did you not see that Raven chick? Or have you already forgotten how she laid out your ass? Either way, I'm not ready to take her on yet," Ayune thought in response while entering the train, and then walked over and took a seat while tapping one foot. "Oh, and how is going on a trip going to change that?" Sakura questioned angrily, and Ayune rolled her eyes mentally. "Because Pinky, Naruto went away from Konoha and came back tough as hell, I'll go on a training trip too, and when I come back, I'll tear that purple-haired bitch apart," Ayune responded while tapping one finger into her right thigh, Sakura suddenly listing a dozen ways that could go wrong. Not listening or even caring what the Pinkette had to say to her, Ayune silently leaned back in her seat and awaited the train to move. It was heading for some place called Metropolis, but she didn't care, so long as it was away from Jump City, and where she could train it was fine by her. Had she opened her eyes, she would have seen a figure walk by her, one with bright yellow snake-like eyes. The figure walked past her without thought or concern, and then sat down a row down from her, lacing his fingers together with a sly smirk across his lips. Ravager's HQ. The white-haired girl frowned as she sat in her hideout, fingers laced together with a deep scowl across her lips. "Now I'm back to square one, how annoying," she thought to herself while closing her eyes as she thought of what she should do next. "Nothing for the moment. The Titans are aware of me, and without a ninja to draw attention from myself, I'll need to be extra cautious. I suppose a little vacation is in order." Ravager mused to herself while pushing her seat back and stood up before walking off into her HQ to vanish into the shadows. Titan's Tower. Naruto slowly opened his eyes with a groan before placing a hand to his head. "Oh, what hit me?" he wondered before shaking his head and looking to his side, blinking as he saw Raven sleeping against him. Looking to his arms and then Raven's body, he also noted that both of them were back to normal, each of them in their original forms, though Raven's hair was long. "Kar-chan?" Naruto asked, and Raven frowned in her sleep before slowly opening her eyes. Looking to the blonde-haired boy, her eyes snapped open and she quickly wrapped her arms around his neck. "Naruto. Thank Azar you're okay," she said, and didn't even care as a few things suddenly melted nearby. Blinking for a moment, Naruto then smiled and wrapped his arms around Raven, while leaning his head into her shoulder. Ahem. Someone called, and both teens turned to see Cyborg smirking towards them with his arms crossed over his chest. "Oh hey Stonehead. What's up?" Naruto asked as Raven gave him a sour look for interrupting the moment. "Just thought you might like to see those ninjas one last time," Cyborg said, and Naruto blinked before looking to Raven. "Don't look at me, I've been asleep with you," Raven reminded, and then looked to Cyborg, who stepped to the side and allowed someone to walk into the room, Naruto gaping, while Raven's eyes widened. The man wore a blue bodysuit with a golden belt around his waist, a pair of gold calf-length boots that came to a point, and loose gold forearm-length gloves that came to a point. He had a long high-collared gold cloak with a brooch at the front of his neck. And last was a golden helmet that seemed to make his eyes look white. Oh shit, he's with the JLU. Naruto mumbled to himself while Raven shook her head to break her of her stupor. Dr. Fate. It's an honor. Raven said with a bow of her head, and the man chuckled lightly. It's alright, young one. There's no need for formalities between comrades, and besides, I and some other members of the League are merely here to help with a little problem you've been having recently. Dr. Fate offered curtly, bearing a slight accent Naruto immediately noticed, though couldn't quite place. Now, if you two are able to get up, I think it's time we send your guests home. Dr. Fate then said while walking out of the room, and Cyborg followed with a grin, Naruto silently turning to Raven. If they brought the Martian Manhunter and Superman with them, I am so dead. He stated with wide eyes, mostly because the Martian Manhunter could read minds, and he wasn't keen on going toe-to-toe with Superman with Dr. Fate around. Upon seeing the look on her blonde boyfriend's face, Raven merely shook her head with a soft smile on her lips. Don't worry, I'll be with you, nothing is going to happen, she assured, and the blonde grinned nervously before looking at her strangely. You seem awfully cheerful. You sure you're alright, Kar-chan? He noticed, then asked of the violet-haired girl, and Raven blinked before frowning to herself. I think I need to meditate after this is over a lot, she said mostly to herself, and Naruto pecked her on the cheek before getting up. Yeah, well, let's go see what Dr. Fate is up to before we go about making any plans, Naruto said while stretching out his sore, aching limbs, and then sighed as he felt his neck, back, and spine crack. Naruto, Raven then said softly, and the blonde turned to her with a raised brow. I want to talk to you about something. I heard your secret, it's only fair I tell you mine. Raven mumbled, and Naruto tilted his head before sitting down. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, Kar-chan, I'm just glad you can still stand being around me, Naruto said, then admitted with a slight grin across his face, Raven smiling towards the boy before shaking her head. No? I want to tell you, I don't want any more secrets between us, Raven quietly admitted while closing her eyes before taking a deep breath and sighing. Silently leaning against the blonde-haired youth's shoulder, Raven then closed her eyes as she started her story. It started before I was born. My mother was a part of a cult that worshipped a demon. That demon's name was Trigun. Raven started to explain while Naruto merely listened to her tale. Outside. What's taking Ray and Nar so long, dude? Beast Boy suddenly wondered, and Dr. Fate smiled beneath his helmet. I believe the two are glad to see one another in good health. We should allow them their happiness, Dr. Fate said, and then looked at Kakashi, the man bound by his magical energies, while Neji, Hinata, and Ino stood, a still unconscious Sasuke slung over Neji's shoulder. I gotta admit, I'm surprised that only he actually tried to escape out of the lot of them, came the voice of the Flash himself, the red-suited superhero standing next to Kid Flash with a smirk as he looked at the shinobi. Kakashi merely frowned and gave the man a look while testing how he could do anything. Unfortunately, whatever Dr. Fate had on his hands and wrists was also holding on to him tightly, while keeping him from using any jutsu. Hey, come on, with us here, how could any of them possibly escape? Kid Flash asked his mentor with a wide grin, and the Flash chuckled lightly while patting the youth on the shoulder. Good point, sure stuff, the Flash admitted with a grin to match Kid Flash's, while Batman and Nightwing both silently shook their heads. Nearby, Wonder Woman smiled at the Flash's antics before looking down to Donna. Well, regardless of circumstances, it's still nice to see you again, Donna, Wonder Woman admitted, and Donna smiled slightly. Beast Boy, watching Cyborg practically drool towards the Amazon, shook his head with a frown. Dude, so not cool, Cyborg, Beast Boy stated, and Cyborg gave him a look before crossing his arms, while Starfire took a step away from Nightwing and Batman. You okay, Star? Cyborg asked the girl with some concern, and Starfire looked to Cyborg before moving to stand beside him away from Batman. The man of Bat frightens me, she mumbled while looking to the strange stoic man, as he stood next to Nightwing impassively. Oh, chill, Star, I'm sure Bats isn't as bad as people say he is, Cyborg told the girl, and Starfire turned back to look at the man, clearly not convinced. Meanwhile, as that was happening with the Titans, Dr. Fate looked to Hinata and the other shinobi from Konoha, with his arms crossed over his chest. So, you're certain you can have him punished for his actions against our people? Dr. Fate asked Hinata, being able to tell that the girl was honest to a fault, and he did not trust any of the others. Yes. His actions were reckless and complete uncalled for given the situation. Lady Tsunade will not allow him to go unpunished for what he's done, Hinata said, her stutter making her bow her head while poking her index fingers together bashfully. Dude, she's like the timid raven, Beast Boy whispered to Cyborg, who looked at Hinata before nodding his head in agreement. Thank you for the assurance, Lady Hinata. Superman had to go to a lot of trouble just to make sure no action was taken against you all by the government for his actions against our people. However, should your people ever come to our world again, I cannot say that we will be quite as hospitable nor as forgiving for any damage done. Dr. Fate stated ominously, and Hinata nodded her head with a slight gulp, shivering as the guy kind of creeped her out. We understand, sir. Hinata said timidly while Dr. Fate nodded his head, Neji looking to the man with a frown soon after. Are you certain you can return us to our world? Naruto used a jutsu to get us here, but we're not certain even he knew what he was doing when he did. Neji asked, then admitted Dr. Fate, and the man seemed to scoff while looking to Neji. I don't know any of your jutsus, but believe me when I say I can return you to your world. Dr. Fate stated and then turned his head when he felt something nearby, smiling slightly upon seeing the two they were waiting on. Naruto and Raven walked out of the tower, Raven now wearing a blue cloak with 2 brooches holding it to her leotard, still dressed in the things her emotions had put on her. Naruto was dressed in the clothes he'd been wearing to fight them, his orange spiral mask placed on one hip, while he wore the Akatsuki's rings openly. What took you guys so long? Beast Boy questioned and Raven glared at the green teen for a moment. Looking around, Naruto inwardly grimaced upon seeing 4 of the JLU's heavy hitters, and then widened his eyes upon seeing Batman. Said man merely narrowed his eyes on the teen for a moment before turning to Dr. Fate. Looks like everyone's here. Batman stated, and Dr. Fate nodded his head for a moment before turning to Hinata, and noticed she seemed anxious. Is there something you need, Lady Hinata? He asked and Hinata made a small sound before nodding her head. I would just like to say goodbye to Naruto-kun. Hinata admitted, and Dr. Fate rubbed his chin for a moment before motioning Naruto over. The blonde looked to Raven for a moment before walking over to Hinata, grimacing slightly as he rubbed the shoulder Orochimaru had pierced the night before. Hey Hina, long time no see. Naruto offered and Hinata blushed while poking her fingers together once more. I'm sorry for all the trouble we might have caused you, Naruto-kun. Hinata said and Naruto frowned while crossing his arms behind his head. Don't worry about it. Just make sure it never happens again and we're good. Naruto offered with a grin, and the Flash leaned over to Kid Flash. Is he really a ninja? I thought they were more like bats. The red-wearing man noted and Kid Flash snickered, while both got a glare from Naruto that was mirrored by the Batman. Shut up. Naruto and Batman said at the same time before looking at one another, and Naruto cleared his throat while looking back to Hinata. Naruto-kun, I also wanted to say, I'm happy you finally found where you belong. Hinata then said and Naruto smiled softly before taking a thoughtful expression. Thank Hina, but I've got a word of advice for you. Naruto said and Hinata blinked while tilting her head to one side. Give Kiba a chance, he's been chasing you as long as I had been chasing Sakura. Naruto said with a grin on his face, and Hinata blushed before timidly poking her fingers together and backing up to stand with the others. Hey Ino, make sure Yushika and Choji look out for Kurenai and little Asuna, wouldn't want the boys to corrupt the next generation. Naruto said and Ino snorted before giving a grin to her fellow blonde. Don't worry, I'll keep them in line. She offered and Naruto looked to Neji. Neji, well, I can't think of anything witty to say to you, other than to try and keep the Uchiha on a leash from now on. Naruto stated, Beast Boy, the Flash, Kid Flash, and Cyborg snickering, while Neji smirked. I'll try. Neji offered and Naruto looked to a clearly amused Dr. Fate. Alright, have at it, man. Naruto offered while backing up to stand next to Raven, Dr. Fate nodding his head and turning to the ninja. Taking a deep breath and holding out his hands, Dr. Fate then closed his eyes and muttered a chant under his breath. Soon the man threw his hands forward and instantly a vortex appeared around the ninja before engulfing them, and all were taken away. Well, I'm glad that is finally over with. Nightwing admitted and Batman turned to his young protege. As promised Robin, we stayed out of your way thus far. Adam said and Nightwing gave the man a look in response. But, due to the recent upsurge of dangerous villains in Jump City lately, don't be too surprised if we choose to check in on you every now and again. Batman then said and Knight visibly scowled towards the man while crossing his arms. My name isn't Robin anymore, it's... Nightwing started to say and Batman cut him off. Nightwing. I know. The man stated and Knight twitched as Batman walked over to Dr. Fate, the Flash looking around and grinning. Well kids, it's been fun seeing you all, but I think it's time we got back to our own tower. The Flash noted with a wide grin, while Wonder Woman knelt down and hugged Donna. Stay safe little sister. She whispered before walking over to stand with the Flash, Batman merely nodding towards Nightwing as he walked over to stand next to Wonder Woman. Well now young titans, if ever any of you need any assistance, feel free to call on us in the JLU. Dr. Fate offered Raven raising a brow at the offer as Dr. Fate then backed up to stand with the other members of the JLU. Watchtower, this is Batman, bring us up. Batman said while placing his fingers against the side of his cowl. Seconds later, the members of the JLU vanished in a brief flash of light, while Naruto breathed a mental sigh of relief. Either Bats didn't recognize me, or maybe he just chose not to mention anything. And I think I'll go with the latter on this. The blonde thought to himself while Beast Boy and Kid Flash looked to one another, Cyborg grinning behind the two. Well dudes, the ninjas are gone. Beast Boy said with a wide grin and Kid Flash picked up for him. The day is, of course, saved yet again. Kid Flash noted to himself with a smirk, and Cyborg decided to pick up for them. And Raven and her boy are back to normal. And you all should know what that means. Cyborg stated with a wide grin on his face, and all three of the boys threw their hands up into the air. Party time. They exclaimed before suddenly looking over to their leader pleadingly, Nightwing frowning for a moment before suddenly smirking. Well, why not? He allowed, and the three guys ran into the tower, Starfire and Donna following them to make sure they didn't destroy anything in their haste. As they headed inside, Knight turned to Naruto and Raven and looked at the blonde. You coming? He asked, and Naruto looked at the tower for a moment before silently shaking his head. It's been fun hanging with you guys, but I really should get back to my place. Naruto stated, and Nightwing mutely nodded his head before giving a look to Raven as he walked into the tower. As her leader left, Raven smiled up at Naruto as he wrapped his arms around her waist and turned to look at her. So, we good for Saturday? Naruto asked with a grin and got a look from Raven. What do you think? She quipped dryly, and the blonde-haired ex-shinobi chuckled while rubbing the underside of his nose. Right then, see you later and stay safe, Kar-chan. Naruto said while giving a mock salute, and Raven silently nodded her head as the blonde-haired youth vanished in a swirl of leaves. Tartarus HQ. Naruto tiredly entered his room. Jinx had been hounding him ever since he'd returned. But, even having to answer a bunch of questions didn't put a damper on his mood. The Konoha flunkies are gone, me and Kar-chan are closer than ever, and the future is starting to look bright. Naruto thought to himself while stretching out his limbs, and then walked into his room before turning and landing back first on his bed. The blonde then blinked as he felt something, and thus looked up to see a smiling Raven looking down at him, his head on her lap. Kar-chan, why are you here? Naruto asked, and the girl merely smiled at the blonde teen, then bent forward and kissed the blonde on the lips. Blinking as she backed up, Naruto quickly shook his head and raised a brow. Are you feeling alright? He asked, and Raven took a mock thoughtful expression for a moment before answering. I'm more than alright. She replied strangely while waving a hand, Naruto idly noting she had a gold ring on her middle finger. Okay, then why are you here? Not that I mind or anything, but don't you usually sleep at this time of night? Naruto asked, and a strange smirk came to Raven's lips as she placed both hands onto his cheeks. I do normally sleep at around this time. But, I wanted to thank you. Raven said, and Naruto tilted his head slightly. For what? He asked the girl, and she twisted them around so she was straddling his waist. For not being afraid of what I am, for not caring who my father was, and for standing by me even when I was a monster. She listed and then reached to the side, Naruto blinking as he noticed another gold ring on her other hand and... Wait a minute, why exactly is your cloak purr? He started to ask, only for Raven to cut him off as she turned off his lamp, while pulling him into a deep kiss with a slight giggle. That was actually a rather refreshing change of pace. I so enjoyed seeing that snake cut to ribbons. Kyuubi noted to himself as he appeared in a familiar cave, Trigun chuckling lightly in response. Yes. And all goes according to plan, your host and my daughter grow closer and closer to one another. Soon, everything we have worked for will come to fruition, you and I will obtain our freedom, and together, we will end the mortal world. Trigun said as red energy started to sink into the ground, the skeletal hand from before clenching and unclenching slowly. Yes. But how much longer must we wait? I swear that this is starting to kill me. Kyuubi grumbled out under his breath, and Trigun merely chuckled in his throat once more before answering. Do not fear, Kyuubi. Our wait shall soon be over. My daughter's birthday is in but a month's time. And on that day, our day of reckoning shall be at hand. Trigun stated while turning back to the skeletal hand in the ground, a diabolical look to his burning red eyes. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.
It's not a game, it's a